Welcome to HBCU Her Voice, a place where we celebrate the powerful voices and stories of remarkable women from historically Black colleges and universities. I'm your host, Shanaja Washington, a proud HBCU graduate myself. I'm thrilled to bring you this platform dedicated to amplifying the voice of our community. We dive into inspiring stories of resilience, success, and the incredible impact these women are making in the world. From trailblazing entrepreneurs to innovative leaders, we bring you the stories that matter, showcasing how HBCU experiences shape paths and fuel passions. We'll explore challenges, victories, and wisdom. Whether you're an HBCU alum, a student, faculty member, supporter, or simply someone who believes in the power of diverse voices, we are so glad to have you. So listen up as we share insights, celebrate achievements, and uplift our community. Together, we can inspire the next generation of leaders and ensure our voices are heard loud and clear. A grand welcome to HBCU Her Voice. And we are back with another amazing episode of the HBCU Her Voice podcast. I am your fabulous host, Shanaja Washington, streaming from the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. And you know, this is one of my favorite places to be. I'm a little bit biased. I love this place because it brings all the good information, all the most top and fabulous guests, and we do not skimp on these guests. We go and find them and we mine them, and we have people. It's becoming a ripple effect, and I'm so proud to be in this space. You know what we do? Our guests come to the stage, tell us their name, where they're streaming from, which HBCU they're repping, and then we get that story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very fabulous host for today.
Hello. My name is Alva Amaker. I'm coming from Prince George's County, Maryland, and I am repping the Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio.
Okay, you know they're going to come on here and be extra. You say the Central, okay? She said because that's the one, and that's what she's repping on today. And Ms. Alva, I am so happy to have you here. So tell us about this beautiful woman that we see. Tell us about your HBCU story. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and we can kick this show off and really get to dig into Miss Alva Amaker.
Okay, wow. Okay, my HBCU story. First of all, I am from Maryland. I got to Central State. Any HBCU, for many of us, that's why I love it. When we come together, we all have a similar story. However, mine directly is the fact of I got an opportunity to get to Central State via athletics. When the athletic director came to the DC area to recruit, he introduced me and referred the the girls basketball coach to me. And she gave me a call, brought me up to campus for a visit, and it was something called May Weekend up there. And I was like, you bring me somebody up on May Weekend, you got to say yes to the university. So I went up there and as a freshman. And then right after I had walked onto the basketball team, I had a financial audit from the financial aid office. And I had to leave before the semester was over because they said I wasn't able to have the money that I had. So so I had to pay it back before I could stay. So I was like, okay, I came home for about a year, if that. While I was home, I got in the DC area, we call it here a good government job. I had got a good government job, but my heart was still at the campus. My heart was wanting to be on the yard. So I worked at the good government job, got the credit union, got the money I needed to go back to the school, and went back to the yard. And from that point, I graduated in 1992 with a degree in health and physical education because of some things as far as my major got changed because I was a physical therapy major at the time. And that got changed during at the end of my junior year because our consortium programs were no longer intact. So it was a lot of challenges for me to be able to get where I am in regards to at least getting that degree. But I was like, I'm here now, but I'm going to finish. And so that's what actually got me in the field of education, because with graduating with the health and physical education degree, I was able to then go on further and then just figure out what my life would be, So that's that part.
absolutely love it. And let me just say, power to you for resilience, right? Because you said, like, after that financial audit, you had to go and get that good government job, right? How long were you there, Miss Alva, at the government job before you went back?
At the government job, I'll tell you, it had to be no more than 9 months. I would go to work every day, and I would be on the yard maybe 9 months to max a year. I know I wasn't gone that a whole year. I would go to work every day, and the secretary across from me would look at me. She's like, I would do my job. I was there, and I was getting into the routine of wearing my little sneakers and dresses to work and going to lunch all the time of the day like they do. But I wanted not to be there. And she's like, "You don't want to be here, do you?" I said, "No." Then she taught me about what the credit union was. And so, but you had to be in the job at least 6 months before you could get in the credit union. So I was there. I stood there that long. And then after a while, she continued to kind of teach me what about the credit union. And then, like, I just need a little money to go back to school. She said, "Well, you in the credit union now. You've been in there for so many months. You can get a loan." I said, "What?" I said, "All right." So I went up there. I got the loan. That was, and I didn't get a loan that was big. I got the loan that was the amount that I needed to get back in school, maybe a little extra, and that was it. And I went back to the campus, and that next semester, and I re-enrolled. And when I re-enrolled, I worked as a nursing assistant, the midnight shift. I was work study with the athletic department, so I didn't have time to try to become an athlete again. So now I wasn't being trained, and I wasn't training. So I just worked in the athletic department as a student trainer, and because again that went along with my major, so that would work itself out. And I got to travel just like if I was an athlete, but I was doing the sports medicine side. And I worked it. So I'll go to class, do the athletic part, work the midnight shift, and that's how I got through school.
And see, that's the part I wanted you to highlight because now we're in this TikTok and Instagram society where there's this instant gratification, right? All the things just look like it magically appeared. But the fact that you said, no, I had to take that time out, which may have seemed like a setback, but you were able to come back and come to school and work it out and do the right thing. So I wanted you to talk about that because we have many viewers, Ms. Alvin, that feel like that step back is something that's supposed to be final. You understand what I'm saying? So
I
thank
did
you
it.
for sharing this story and coming back with that. So I noticed you said when you graduated, you had some degree in special education. Is that correct?
Physical education and health. Because with being a physical therapy major, you taking a lot of all of the medical classes. People think, you
Mm-hmm.
know, when the consortium that we had with Ohio Medical got disbanded because they changed their consortium pieces. At the end of my junior year, I didn't have my next step because I had done all the my practicums was the last thing I really need to do for my senior year. And when that consortium program disbanded, we got called by the dean of students, said, okay, well, this is what happened. So these are your options. And of course, they said, of course, as you already had taken so many medical courses, you could go pre-med. I was like, ain't no way, I'm not taking organic chemistry too. I just barely got out of organic chemistry one. So I said, I don't want to do that. But I said, and I'm leaving here next year. I said, I'm leaving with my class. So I end up looking at what our options were, and health education was, I just had to take a few classes in health education and the education courses and those specialty classes for physical education because the biomechanics and all those things I already had already. So it just makes sense, which again, God's plan is always different than our plan. We can have it. He's going to chuck it up to something else every time.
Look, don't come for me. I'll be telling my guests, yes, I know I'm living it right now. My plan was one thing, but he's saying something completely different, and I'm learning to align with that path. So look, I'm getting it now, Miss Alpha. So don't come for me. I got it. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this transition from school to kind of get into the career path because now you have a consulting firm or you're becoming a consultant correct?
Yes, I do have a consulting company. It's A&A Athletic Consulting is the primary, and as a DBA out of that, I have Vigilante Training Center. Um, the I've always been an athlete. I've been an athlete since 8 years old. Working in sports medicine showed me behind the what I call behind the veil in regards to athletic operations, seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. Of course, as an athletic trainer, your first thing is as a first responder and helping make sure the athletes are safe and doing the practical services that are needed. Coming to the community and coming to school, I teach health education and I teach sports medicine, currently now. However, as a consultant and being an athletic administrator, which kind of kept me in that realm as well, um, I I have the experience and expertise of looking at operations and seeing where the breakdown is. I have been a first responding trainer, CPR trainer instructor since 1994, and I just allowed that to continue to build out to become a fish. Then I officially became a training center. At one point, the industry would not allow you unless you had so much background, had certain degrees, or to actually become a training center and so I had to over time. And I didn't have that entrepreneurial mindset back in the 90s like that. But it was just a matter of looking at what I was doing, seeing what the needs are, and recognizing that the blend of the two oftentimes don't go together. With people can either do consulting in one side but don't look at the safety aspect. Everything I do, I look at the safety standards that are in place happening. I don't know how my mind started working toward the realm all the time, but that's where it is. And that's kind of where that secondary side came from. But Vigilant Safety Training Center is where I operate out of. Yes.
Okay, great. Because two things from that segment, and the reason why it's so important to me to have so many different walks of life as it relates to careers is because some people don't even know that these paths exist, right? Because you talked about getting into training center and that being the thing. So for someone hearing that, two things I want you to tell someone. If that was a path that they would want to go into in terms of training, potentially opening up a training center, what are some of the things that you would recommend as maybe the top 3 pointers? And then I'm also too going to have you come behind that because you said something else that was very powerful. You said back in the 90s, I did not have the entrepreneurial mindset. That's what you said. So
Hmm.
where did you figure out? When did you figure out you had it? Right? Because there's a difference between going in every day and when that shift really happens and saying this is what I really do. That's a big that's a real big
Hmm.
leap. So I want you to talk about that too. So just to reiterate, it's the if someone was going into wanting to do some type of training and open up a training center, maybe offer some pointers for that, and then come back and layer on that that importance and that transition to the entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay. When becoming a training center, again, it was I was under, of course, the standard as an instructor, and most individuals that teach CPR and first responders, you're under the governing bodies as American Red Cross and American Heart Association. And there are several others, National Safety Council, and those are the primary, the big three. And some of those agencies, they used to especially have problems with, you could not get a training center under them unless you had so a certain staff number, or the person or your board had these degrees and things like that. So right now I am with Emergency Care and Safety Institute, which is if you have years of experience with instructing, evidence of, and have some instructor training leadership, then that is one of the agencies that you can get your own training center under. So first of all, you would research the ones that are in your area. You would determine which ones, as far as governing bodies, are actually authorized in your state, because all industries are not authorized in every state. in that you want to ensure that they are recognized by the academies or American, the national safety, it's a commission, an accreditation commission. You want to make sure that those safety training centers are recognized by that and supported by the American Cardiac Council. So that is the key things, knowing what your area that you live in, that state, who they accept from. If they only accept from Red Cross and American Heart, then it's going to be very difficult to have a training center operating out of that jurisdiction. But if the other accrediting bodies are acceptable, then you can go under those.
Okay, that's great
And then the
information.
next thing,
Yeah, and I'll say, don't forget that other piece now because this is the piece I want to hear about
that
that.
mindset shift.
Yep, I want to hear about it.
Okay. Okay. The mindset, as I stated, I did not in the 90s have well, let me say it like this. I didn't recognize that it was an entrepreneurial mindset. And I say that because I graduated in 1992. I started teaching CPR in 1994. I started I developed the uh, after school program, summer camp program, and all tutorial programs at the church. I ran that for 13, 14 years. And I found myself always being a fixer. And so if something is not in existence, I will create it. I will start it. I will find out, I will research it and kind of say, I will give the suggestion to whoever that might need to have it. But if they don't move on it and this still becomes a barrier or still becomes a hole or a gap that needs to be filled, I will go ahead and I will do it. And so what I realized over a period of years, I looked at all of the things that I was always fixing and bridging the gap between. And I realized that's the thing. I do it on my own. I'll do it, ain't no problem. I just don't want to be in any situation where there is a gap that needs to be filled and can't and could be filled, but nobody's moving on it. So I realized, and I was then just pretty much told like, you don't want to work for nobody. I'm like, I work for people. But the thing is that most people just fall in line and comply. You don't do that. And I didn't recognize that was a mindset. And I continue to operate like that. And I'm not fearful of doing that next thing that I feel like that gap exists. Because if it's a gap, then there's always opportunity. That's what they say. And where there's a problem, there's also opportunity. And so that's what I realized. And I'm good at fulfilling those opportunities.
That's absolutely powerful because one of the things that I picked up was that falling in line mentality. Of course, I was in, the corporate before I came on this side, but it was that creativity that I felt was ripped, right? Because you were just doing the thing, going to get a thing, putting up the square peg in a square hole. That's what you were doing, and that's what you were taught to do. But when you start to kind of come on the other side, you feel all this creativity, almost like a child again, to where you're putting things back together. You're being the mastermind. You're figuring out, how to connect the dots. And it's such don't get me wrong, it can be a little rough on this side because you got to do so much, especially when you're new and you're growing. But it's also such a healthy experience of the mind because you have to be stretched so much. You always have to be in a learning mindset. You always have to be kind of in a collaboration mindset, figuring out what you need to sustain the model and keep the model going. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I want you to you talked about the service a little bit, but can you kind of tell us a future look? What are you hoping to do in the future with your consulting business? Are there any other services that you're looking to add? And just tell us about that growth trajectory.
Okay. Where I see us going now, I have a youth organization, a sports organization. Again, so much of my operations of what I do is event management, safety protocols, and player safety. But looking at event management and the whole spectator thing, I have branched out to doing civility training, not beyond sportsmanship, because civility is a mindset. And without that mindset of respect of other people, having empathy for other people, being aware of your own social triggers, actually is what creates a chaos in an environment where somebody don't understand that their behavior is inappropriate and don't know how to self-manage it. So I moved over to the civility side because we can have as many police in the environment that we want. Without that self-management, we can never put enough personnel to manage an event because we're always going to be outnumbered. So how do we shift the mindset of people and doing it in a certain realm? So the realm I focus on is concerts, people that go fans, and spectators. Then, so what I have in development of that aspect, I have behavioral cues. So within event management, they can know how to respond by using bystander interventions and situational awareness. So in creation of an app is what I have done to add also to that experience because again, depending on the size of the venue and the capacity of the organization, their social cues might not work. But if we have an app that will be able to have signaling, anonymous reporting that situation is happening in the environment. And so that's the next phase of that, or where I'm going is creation of the app. And we're currently in our second phase of beta testing. And so getting ready to disperse many of the solutions to some other people in different environments to where I can get that data back before I do the full release. And I figure I'll probably have that launch ready to go by the spring. And I'm very, very excited about that. And it's called Vigilant Safety Solutions will be the name of the app in itself. And also the social emotional, the bridging the gap between social emotional learning um, and and uh, and athletics is the other realm. And actually going to big events like tournaments and 2 3 day tournaments and actually having a what I'm calling a relaxation station, a reset station for athletes to be able to re-engage and reset themselves because of all the stressors and pressure that they may be experiencing. So taking that kind of like a mobile um, support system on the road for
Okay.
athletes.
So that's the part I love right there. That whole social, emotional piece. Oh my God, it is so big, especially for this generation. Because I always say, I'm just thankful I'm not in school at this time. I don't think I would have survived because they have so many external pressures and things of that sort. It's a real big topic that needs to be addressed. In so many. I mean, beyond even sports. Just in these arenas and talking about that and have no support system because they need some more outlets for that. So to have
Yeah.
that in sports, to have that in sports, in addition to them doing their everyday life, I mean, there is also to the game, right? There's the pressures of the game and the pressures to perform. So having that extra level of the social, emotional piece is super important. So I'm happy that you're touching on that. Let me ask you this because you ladies, and guys, you will see more ladies that are in the sports arena through the course of the podcast as they progress. I have a couple more. And I did say, and I wanted to ask you this in terms of navigating what is really a male dominated space and you dominating
Mm.
or navigated as a woman. Tell me about some of that experience. I've had a little bit of a previous guest that's in some of the similar arena that was telling me about that. But I want to hear from your perspective dominating that male dominated space and really kind of how you kept your headspace clean and being able to go through that.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting how you're perceived as a woman in that space. The first thing um and now in representing myself as a woman, it's males tend to think they could charm to get services, get a discount, or charm you into buying things that you may not want. Because as an athletic administrator, that was one of the key things I always found when it came to vendors. They'll talk nice, da, 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 and then they would want appear as if they're trying to charm you. When that same conversation they would have with the males was not the same. It was strictly business like. And so I had learned, of course, through my years of doing sports medicine, business is business is business. I was always in a male dominated field, in situations that you had to manage. And that being a female, you cannot, I had to learn, and definitely early on, that you have to maintain your standards. Go do your job and come on out. Do your job. Give me the service I'm asking for and come on out. I don't need a date. I need that. I need the services I'm asking for, and that's relatively it. And men tend to not initially, until you start respecting the fact that you know what you know, would not kind of hear you in conversations. Now, even especially right now, many times I go to, say, safety conferences and trainings and things, and I'm sitting in a room. I'm the only black one in there. I might be other, might be a couple of black men, but they're used to the good old boy network, and they still don't even recognize me until I start asking questions of and saying, well, how would you modify that, what you're saying that we should do on this particular response, if that organization does not have the capacity to do that? They don't have the personnel to do that. And then I have to make them think a little harder. And then they're like, okay, yeah, maybe she know a little bit more than it appears that she knows. And so you got to kind of allow yourself to be, see, but not overly pushy, because that becomes a problem too. Now it becomes like you're the forceful black woman that people are afraid of. So it's just finding and navigating your space, say what you know, add your nuggets of the knowledge you want, ask questions that will challenge and makes people think a little bit further. I don't know if that's just my natural way of doing things, but that's what I have experienced.
I love financial services, which was definitely male dominated. I had the same encounters of being, not only woman but black woman in the room, whatever. And it's still so. I mean, I don't know if I should say interesting, or it's just still so frustrating that you have to walk on eggshells to not be labeled the angry black woman. You know, and it's across all, it's across all arenas. I mean, and it's a crazy thing. I mean, and you just for knowing, just for saying, hey, I know how to do this a certain way. You're deemed pushy, you deemed know it all just for navigating rooms. So that is something that still today frustrates me. I wrote about it in my book and talked
very
about
much.
this. Being termed the angry black woman. That's why it's so important, because you mentioned that, knowing your standards and knowing your boundaries from day one when you step in there, that is so important. So when we have, women from all walks of profession, I try and, ask these type of questions because we need to hear it, and we need to be having the conversations, because there are a lot of women that don't know how to go in and navigate those spaces with confidence.
Yeah. And often that comes from simply just being fearful of what they're going to say, and or being, like I say, confident enough to know you know what you know. Like I say, people can move you out of positions all day long, but they can't never take your knowledge. So once you know your knowledge is what empowers you, and your skill sets and what empowers you is what will allow you to still thrive no matter what situation you're in and no matter who you're sitting in front of, especially because your expertise is special because it's you, and you got that vision that you get from your experiences, what you see, what you know, and because what's for you is for you, and nobody else can take that.
That part, y'all heard it first here. Okay, she said, "What's for you, what's for you is for you, and can't nobody take that." So, Ms. Alva, before I need you to tell us where we can connect with you. Where can we find you? Whether it's your social media handles, your website, whatever you want to share for connection points, please provide that so that we can have that in our podcast notes.
Okay, you can find me on LinkedIn at Vigilant AD, VIGILANTAD. And you can find me on, I guess, Instagram. Instagram is Vigilant AD as well. The website is www.vigilantad.com. So that's where I am. I'm a Vigilant AD, because everybody always say when things happen, it's like, oh, remain vigilant. But I always say, what does that look like? It has a look, it has a feel. So anytime you think of that, you hear that word, think of Vigilance Safety Training Center, because that's what we're about.
I absolutely love it. And that is definitely a buzz phrase. But she say, look, let's put a plan in motion. Tell me what. Be vigilant actually feels like. So you like me, I like a little action. Tell me what it looks like, okay? But I tell people all the time, like, how did our podcast interview go so quickly? It's already to the end of the podcast interview. It's always beautiful because we just sit here and have the real conversations and we just bring it to you in the most authentic way. But this is the part of the podcast where we turn it back over to you for final thoughts. I tell my guests that if someone watches this interview and all they see is this part, I want you to give us some good final parting words for this space and really something that captures the essence of Miss Alva. So I'm going to turn it over to you to final thoughts and we'll be back to close the show.
Wow. Okay. I would say key things to know about Alva and any services that we could provide or just what we do and the impact that I would like our services and my team for us to make is to create a culture of safety, create a culture of relationships and people knowing each other again and just reconnecting. It is so important that we know who we are, talk to your neighbors, because you never know when you're going to have to need a supporting hand from someone, when you're going to need to be that one for somebody else. As far as vigilance is concerned, this is where we thrive. If we can remain vigilant and be consistent about our policies, our practice, and to keep in mind of that somebody is on the other end of whatever operational activity that you do. There's somebody else being impacted because you're not operating in a vacuum. So there's somebody else that's being impacted by what you do. Just make sure that impact is on the positive side and everybody can go home safely, safely and happy and empowered by what they got from you and from being in your space. And that's what I live on.
I love it. And that honestly for me was something empowering the space, right? It's something that I really embodied this year because I wanted this space to feel authentic and we have an exchange that we can look back, years to come and just still feel good about the conversation that we had. So that's
Mm-hmm.
always been important for me in creating a platform like this. But to everybody in the HBCU Her Voice podcast, and I have to thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. Miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. I will never leave this place without saying that I love you. And we'll be back really in no time with another amazing woman on the HBCU Her Voice podcast. And until that time, we're out.
Oh.